Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined today by Andrew Erickson and by Chris Welsh. Welsh, we don't often get to podcast together. Hopefully, we're going to get to do it a whole lot more this season with you being here full time and transitioning into football as I did a couple of weeks ago. How are you doing today, buddy?
We're doing good. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be in the analyst chair. I like to bounce around between the two. Like to see that good old Erickson face right there. Erickson apparently, we got buddied up into this season. Erickson's my buddy for the year. We have just show after show. We got in-season show. We got Discord show. You can see that happy smirk. Erickson's so happy about it to be paired with me too. But I'm excited to do this show with you boys.
Erickson, how you doing?
Oh, just happy to be here. Happy to be here with Welsh, my buddy, again, talking about
I was waiting for you to jump in and be like, yes, I am happy to be with Welsh, or no, I'm not.
Ecstatic. Can't wait.
Oh, keep laying it on. It's going. I can really tell.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It is very, very apparent. All right, well, let's just jump into the show. We're going to be talking about some undervalued players on every site. So it's really important to remember on your draft day that every site is different. And by and large, the ADP and the rankings on each individual site will largely determine the order those guys go, particularly in home leagues with more casual players where they're sort of anchored to what the rankings are directly in front of them. And this is a way you can take advantage on draft day by having your own rankings. We would strongly recommend ECR, of course, our expert consensus rankings, which you can find at fantasypros.com/rankings, or just highlighting certain players that you know are undervalued on these sites that you can wait maybe an extra round or two on ESPN as opposed to Yahoo. You can kind of know what positions are going earlier on certain sites. So this is a very key way you can take advantage, particularly, again, in your home leagues and more casual leagues. So we're going to be going through our favorite undervalued running backs and wide receivers on ESPN, Yahoo, NFL.com, Sleeper, and CBS. Those are kind of the big five we wanted to hit on. So we'll each be giving you a couple of players from each of those platforms. I do have a quick announcement here. The winner of Trophy Smack's Golden Toilet Trophy is Barnois52. Please get in touch with our customer support agents at mailbag@fantasypros.com with your mailing address and proof of your subscription to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel, and we will get that shipped out to you. Again, the winner is Barnois52. Congratulations. And if you want a chance to win the ultimate symbol of fantasy football dominance, the custom XL Champion turnover chain, courtesy of our good friends at Trophy Smack, the #1 destination for epic fantasy football trophies, then this is your moment. This massive 5-pound chain isn't just for show. It is a statement. To enter, all you need to do is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now, drop a comment below on any of our videos, and that's it. We will be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so to make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize. All right, fellas, let's start off with ESPN. And Erickson, we'll start off with your running back. Who is the most undervalued running back on ESPN right now?
Yeah, so running backs tend to be overvalued, in my opinion, on the ESPN platform in the gross way you look at it. But for me, the guy that I was able to pinpoint is Chuba Hubbard for the Carolina Panthers. So RB51 on ESPN. He's RB41 in the ECR rankings. And I just don't think he's getting enough credit because he's going to be the week 1 starter for the Carolina Panthers. Jonathan Brooks, at best, is going to come back week 3, week 4, but he's still on the PUP NFI list. He's not healthy coming off the torn ACL from his college days. So I think Hubbard, if you're hitting running back late and you need production right away in week 1, Chuba Hubbard's your guy. And Dave Canales has talked him up. He likes Hubbard. He wants to feed Hubbard. Again, this is a quote from Canales earlier this offseason. That's the attitude we're looking for. He runs angry, runs with a style that we want to be about. So I can't wait to give Chuba those opportunities. And when you look at Chuba's 2 best games last year, 83 yards, 104 rushing yards, that was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' elite run defense. Who was the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers last year? Dave Canales. He's seen what Chuba Hubbard can do in action. So I think Hubbard is just super undervalued. Again, I think he's even low in ECR, but he's basically free in ESPN, and that's not usually the case with a lot of these running backs being drafted very aggressively on that platform.
Do you think in general, Erickson, that we maybe sometimes, I feel like I've seen this phenomenon more recently in fantasy football during drafts where people are so focused on a guy like Jonathan Brooks, hey, he could be a league winner in the back half of the season because he could be really good by the time we get to the fantasy playoffs. And I feel like fantasy managers are starting to maybe ignore September and October a little bit. Maybe not ignore, but not value it as much, where those wins will help get you to the playoffs more so than a guy like Jonathan Brooks, being on the PUP list or something like that. Do you think that we as an industry are maybe somewhat undervaluing in general guys who we trust to help us earlier in the season, but maybe not later?
I do think so. I think that it is a balancing act. I think that you want to make sure you have your bases covered with front end production balanced out with back end production. But yeah, I agree. It matters. It's funny because when you're, 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, well, you can dictate your league. Like you can make trades and then get these guys later where teams, hey, I'm out of the race, but I have Jonathan Brooks on my bench, but I can't use him because I need wins right now. So when you're just stacking up win after win, I think it kind of lets you play bully ball a little bit with the rest of your league mates. And you can dictate trades where, hey, you're out of the contention. Like Jonathan Brooks can't help you. You got to trade him to me for less than his value, or else you're going to be out. So I think just stacking up wins at the end of the day is super important. And a player like Chuba Hubbard is someone that I think can help teams win in September and October.
Welsh, what do you think about Hubbard?
Yeah, I love that one. I think it's super sneaky because exactly what you said, like there is this focus that gets taken away from the beginning of the year. And there's a lot of instances of players, not even just running backs, by the way, because like Chuba could be a guy that you could throw in a flex spot. You could have ended up taking, a Josh Downs, who could be a little bit questionable for the first week. Jaylen Warren would be one of those guys. Jonathan Brooks is the prime example, though. We don't like get into crazy heavy handcuffs or anything like that. But like Chuba Hubbard's gonna be the guy to start. 2 or 3 weeks of that full production could be make or break. It could be to your playoff. So I think at this cheap of a cost, Chuba Hubbard is a fantastic get. It's just the upside. We get so focused on all these players where the narrative will be like, well, hey guys, love this guy. Maybe doesn't produce for the first 3 or 4 weeks, but on the back half of the year, they're going to be this or that. Chuba Hubbard's the exact opposite. It's like, guys, you're going to get production early on from him. You might not get it latter part of the year as Jonathan Brooks bounces back, but I think at the value, that's what makes this such a great pick by Erickson. And, it's funny enough that we're both doing this because Erickson and I are the two probably most that have done this type of research. I do these shows every single year that breaks down. It's a ranks analysis across the sites. And Erickson has got a great article that's out there breaking down these type of things. And that's why we're doing these. And I'll tell you right now, just as we're going to move forward, I'll bet you I stole a bunch because I got to the sheet before Erickson of Erickson's guys. But the ones he put up, I was like, yep. We're both on the same track of what the best values are. And I got another running back that's in a little bit of different space from Chuba Hubbard, though, Worm.
And that's the reason why I didn't open the show calling you my buddy.
Yeah, I know you were mad about it.
Guys, I was kind of mad and upset about it.
Holding on to it.
Oh, I was going to pick this guy. This guy's perfect. Oh, he's already in the sheet. Oh, I got to find somebody else.
No joke. And then, no joke. Yesterday, I'm doing it. I started to get anxious. I was like, oh my God, I got to get this done. I would just felt this anxiety that Erickson was going to drop his entire list. And I'm like, no. And I got mine out and the relief, the monkey off my back was like Steve Young in the 90s of the Super Bowl. I felt so good when I got my list out before Erickson.
Okay, well, first of all, Welsh, you got to know who you're talking to. We're too young to remember Steve Young actually getting. I mean, I know who he is, but I didn't watch him get the monkey off his back. Second of all, yeah, Erickson, his first iteration of the list, he had a different running back here for ESPN, and then he was like, "Oh wait, Welsh picked this guy for a different platform, so we'll save him for later." So, yeah, it's definitely some overlap here. Welsh, let's go to your running back.
Yeah, so I'm gonna find this is actually in the same general vicinity on ESPN. By the way, this player is similar to Chuba's value, which is kind of crazy, and this guy might be the starter for their team. So if you go over on ESPN, Rico Dowdle is my favorite running back value on ESPN. He's got an ECR of 44, but over on ESPN, he's running back 49. 49. I mean, it's practically a nothing burger for a guy that what's the worst case situation? He's in a timeshare for an offense that we've seen run 2 backs relatively successful for many years. Elliott is back, and I think that's what puts some of it in question on what Elliott could do in the passing game, what Elliott's going to end up doing in the goal line situations and his familiarity with the offense. But this team has been letting the reins open for Rico Dowdle. He has been the guy. He looks like he's going to be the number one. I think he's underrated in the passing game. I think he's going to have more primary shares. I think he's going to start out more games. And even if this is in some type of a share, I don't think he can end up being Tony Pollard of years past, because this would be the best value of all time if you're getting a RB 49 on ESPN who's going to be an RB 12. But I think there's a legitimate shot that you can get at worst flex return from a guy like Rico Dowdle. And this is one of the cheapest places you can find him. So to be able to find a theoretical number one, we give you Chuba Hubbard, who will be the number one for the first couple weeks, and then it's kind of questionable. But Rico Dowdle's a guy that could hold it the whole season, understanding what Elliott might end up just being in this offense, which could be more than expected. But Elliott has had a higher overall ADP than Dowdle throughout this entire thing. But ESPN has him buried the most. RB 49, expert consensus ranks have him 5 RB higher. He is my favorite RB value of ESPN.
And by the way, Erickson, I think ECR is also too low. So really the gap in terms of what I think you're getting value in terms of where he's going on ESPN is even greater than the difference between ESPN and ECR. Where do you have him ranked, Erickson?
I have him ranked ahead of Ezekiel Elliott. I know that much because I want the upside play. And I think that's definitely Rico Dowdle. So I have him as RB 32. So, I mean, it's not even close to where he's being drafted or where his ECR is. Look, and he's cheap everywhere. Again, I could have put Rico Dowdle on every single one of these websites.
100%, 100,000% that you said that. Every single list, he is low. Thank you for saying that.
So, and the play with Dowdle is, look, he would be a fine pick here if he was a straight handcuff. If Zeke was in his prime, Rico Dowdle, if Zeke goes down, I have an RB1. Dowdle would be fine as a handcuff, but he could be the starter for the Dallas Cowboys. So this isn't a guarantee. I think Rico Dowdle's such a great running back. He's going to take over this backfield. That's not a guarantee, but it's well within his range of outcomes. And there's no price. There's no price that's better than this, where it's free. And if week 1 plays out, he's buried. It's a 3-way committee with Royce Freeman, and it's horrible. Well, then you move on and you get somebody else off the waiver wire. So I think that he's a no-brainer pick in home leagues, and I'm going to try to leave every draft I can with Rico Dowdle just to kind of see how things play out in week 1.
I currently have him 43rd in my rankings. As we are talking, I'm moving him up. I want him in the 30s at the least. I just think he's too low, and it's a great call by you guys. Let's go to the wide receivers on ESPN. Erickson, who's your wide receiver that you want to highlight?
Amari Cooper. I think that this is the lowest I could find him on any of the home sites. He is wide receiver 31. And ECR's wide receiver 24. I have him wide receiver 18. So I've been higher on Cooper than the consensus, but I mean, wide receiver 31. That's kind of disrespectful, honestly. I mean, he had 10th in receiving yards last year, tied for second behind only Tyreek Hill in plays of 20 yards or more. And he was good with Deshaun Watson. He was good with 4 different quarterbacks last year for the Cleveland Browns. So I just think that he's just wrong. It's wrong price. Wide receiver 31. I don't know if Amari Cooper's ever finished that low in his entire NFL career. So I think that he's super undervalued.
I'm looking right now in his finishes. He was 37th in 2017. He only played 14 games that year. Every other year he was 20th one year, 25th one year. The rest are all like in the teens or higher. Like he maybe game to game, not the most consistent player week to week. Like he has some of the big blow up stuff. By the end of the year, he's like always in like that 18 range. So
see, people want upside on a week to week basis, except for Amari Cooper. Like that's the only guy nah, he doesn't have the upside, even though he scored he's still scoring points against the Houston Texans, I think.
Dude, also, I want to point out last year, he finished the season. I could be corrected here because I'm not looking at all the players, but I don't know if there was a player that had more targets in the final 3 games than Amari Cooper. He had 37 targets over the last 3 games. And we're talking about a tier difference in on the ECR over on FantasyPros. Not only do we give you the players and their numbers, we give you the tiers. Amari Cooper is in that 4th tier of wide receivers at 24. He would be mid-tier 5 based on this ESPN rank, in the mid-tiers of that. And we're talking he is the bottom of a higher upper echelon tier. I think this is a great, great call by Erickson.
By the way, I was actually looking at standard for his finishes in half PPR. It's even better. He's been outside the top 25 twice, including that 2017 season. Every other time he's been 19th or better. Like he is in the teens or better every year. And last year, most receiving yards of his career, highest yards per reception of his career. He only had 5 touchdowns. So if that bounces back a bit too, I mean, yeah, I love this call. I agree. Like he's just being overlooked in a way that I don't think makes a ton of sense. Welsh, let's go to your wide receiver for ESPN.
Okay, so I have like a quote tattooed on my forearm, and I have a second quote that I'm going to be putting on this. I have a scheduled date for it, and it's this great philosopher. And this philosopher said, "Do not leave your draft without a Green Bay wide receiver." This great philosopher's name was Andrew Erickson, and I take that to heart here. And Dontayvion Wicks, he's at the top. I don't know if he might be number 1 sleeper. We have consensus sleeper rankings, which is another really cool thing we put as a part of the rankings. He's one of the top 2 wide receivers on that list. ECR is still low at 63, but on ESPN, 66, wide receiver 66. Will he go at wide receiver 66? Probably not. I mean, he is seen as a top sleeper, but with the key, and this is a key point I've always talked about when analyzing these sites, is what that can do is that can put him further down the board until somebody catches him. When they're doing the little scroll down and they're queuing up their players, he's even further away from being found. And as Ben said, if you watch the Fantasy Fest, go back on the YouTube channel. We're going to have all the great videos there. Dontayvion Wicks is a sleeper across the board because Erickson's right. You do want a Green Bay wide receiver. You want to walk away with someone because every single one of them is cheap. And there is huge upside. Romeo Doubs maybe is the most boring of all of them. Christian Watson might have the highest touchdown target share. Jaden Reed is probably the most versatile. I've called him, he's Green Bay's Deebo Samuel. But Dontayvion Wicks is the biggest explosive breakout option, and he comes at a literal free cost, the 66th wide receiver out there in the world where you can get your tattoo of leave your draft with a Green Bay Packers wide receiver. ESPN gives you the best opportunity to do it at the absolute lowest cost, and I, without question, know Erickson had to go, come on, when I had this one on ESPN, because this is the value of values.
Erickson, are you like, is Wicks the Green Bay Packer wide receiver you would highlight, or is there another one that you find yourself gearing towards also?
I mean, it's just he's the easiest to get because he's the cheapest. That's really what it comes down to. And again, I don't think you should shy away from any of them. This is an offense we should be really excited about. You can draft multiple of them, but considering he is free, he's someone that you're most likely going to get because it doesn't cost anything.
So the undervalued players we like on ESPN are Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, Amari Cooper, and Dontayvion Wicks. Have you guys been hungry for some college football? Well, we finally get a taste this weekend. Don't miss any of the action. Jump in at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's a small but mighty slate of games for Week 0, including a big matchup in Ireland. This is going to be DraftKings' biggest college football season to date. Enjoy the ride now all the way through the expanded playoffs. Plus, all newbies getting into the college spirit, here's an extra something special. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings all college football season long. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, guys, let's go to the other kind of in that top 2 of platforms that most people play on, and that's Yahoo. Erickson, let's start with your running back here.
Yeah, so my running back here on Yahoo is Jerome Ford for the Cleveland Browns. Again, just another player that's going to be the starter week 1 with Nick Chubb going to be sidelined for the beginning of the year. Not sure when Nick Chubb is going to come back after he suffered that devastating knee injury last season, but Jerome Ford looks like the guy. I do prefer Hubbard straight up over Ford because I think Hubbard has a better chance of taking on a bell cow role where Ford is going to be the guy that they mostly lean on, especially on passing downs. But I do have some concerns about Deontay Foreman kind of vulturing at the goal line if the Browns get close in the end zone. So that's the only concern I have with Ford, but RB40 ADP on Yahoo, his ECR is RB36. So those are just things I wanted to mention when it comes to Jerome Ford. And with Yahoo in general, the other thing that I learned in the article that you can find on Fantasy Pros is that the elite tight ends, we're not talking tight ends on this show, but elite tight ends specifically went super late on Yahoo. So that's something to keep in mind that rounds 5, 6, 7, you're getting stud tight ends, and that's not how it is on every single platform.
Welsh, what are you doing with Jerome Ford this year?
I love drafting Jerome Ford. I do think Nick Chubb is a freak. He's a freak of an athlete, and he can come back like the amount of time he can come back early could defy all odds, and he will be put and thrust back into a major role. But at the same time, I don't think any of it is going to diminish Jerome Ford this season. So this is another one of those, probably from a bigger, even though you just said you kind of prefer Chuba Hubbard, this is like a bigger scale version of that, where it's like, I think Nick Chubb will come back and have a role, but Jerome Ford is not going to lose anything massively. Like, he's not going to go down to 2 or 3 touches per game. I think he will be the primary guy for however long it lasts. If we're being real, Nick Chubb probably first 4 games, and it's all going to be Jerome Ford's deal. And then it'll be a slow trickle in. So by the second back half of the year, it could be a little bit more primary Nick Chubb, but Jerome Ford is a fantastic bet, and you are drafting him on Yahoo outside of even a flex running back. For, again, a guy that for at worst, a quarter of the season could be the number 1. At reasonable, could be the number 1 for half of the season. And as optimistic as you want to be, he could be kind of the guy, the primary guy for the majority of the year. Post flex rank outside the top 36, Jerome Ford, love it.
I brought this up on the show before. There were only 5 running backs last season to have multiple rushes of 50-plus yards during the 2023 season. It was Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Devon Achane, Derrick Henry, all names you would expect, And then the fifth was Jerome Ford, who did it twice. So he, is an explosive runner. He has that capability. And if Nick Chubb isn't the, freakiest outlier to come back, at full strength from that devastating knee injury, then Ford looks even better. So, I love this pick as well. Welsh, I know Erickson loved the running back you're about to bring up here.
Yeah, this is the guy we were talking about earlier that was almost put in the ESPN. Let's kind of attach a similar thing that Erickson said about Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle is cheap in all spots. A lot of places are still undervaluing Chase Brown. It's not as dramatic as Rico Dowdle, but Chase Brown is relatively undervalued across the board. But I understand the reason behind it is there's still a lot of people that think, well, hey, they signed Zach Moss, and Zach Moss could end up being the guy. But we have seen their own team. You've seen offensive linemen say Chase Brown should be the guy. You've seen them working him as a one. I think he's more explosive in the pass game. And Chase Brown has an ECR inside of a flex spot, 34. But on Yahoo, he is RB 38. So again, you're talking about almost outside the top 40. Same qualification as Jerome Brown. This is a player that you get outside of the flex that, unlike the Jerome Brown spot, like right off of day one, Zach Moss and Chase Brown are going to be battling at it. But I think Chase Brown is the best bet of all of them because he is going to be and can be a 3-down back. He is a receiving option. Zach Moss has a lot of injury history. You do worry because you've seen volume from Zach Moss before. But I think Chase Brown is a great bet of getting an RB1 for a team that is outside the top 36. This is a great value. You want Chase Brown, Yahoo is the place to do it.
Early on in the offseason, it seemed like the gap between Zach Moss and Chase Brown was like fairly sizable on a lot of sites, particularly on ECR. That gap has closed significantly. I think Zach Moss is now 2 spots ahead of Chase Brown in ECR. And if you look at, the Fantasy Pro specific rankings, just our experts, that, is even more bigger disparity. I mean, it's now Chase Brown is ahead of Zach Moss. And I know you agree, Erickson. In fact, you have Chase Brown well ahead of Zach Moss. But I think that's something that has kind of flipped within the last few weeks, maybe within the last month, compared to early in the summer when people were first getting into this. I felt like Moss was going ahead of Brown. That's no longer the case, really.
Yeah, I mean, I've had Chase Brown consistently ahead of Zach Moss. That's who I'm pushing my chips in on. That's who I think is going to be the Bengals RB1. And shout out to our guy, Jerome Brown. Welcome to the Welshisms. Jerome Brown, baby. Chris Wells. Jerome Brown. Now,
what did player. Did I
combine Jerome Ford and Chase Brown into Jerome Brown?
Yes. 100%. Take all the great pieces. Which one did I do it for? Your version or mine? Did I do it for Chase Brown, Jerome Brown?
Didn't even catch it.
I didn't catch it either. Oh man, chalk it up. If we could save it for all year, that's a creative player. That's who I'll be starting my new Madden season.
Every time Welsh has a Welshes, I'm just going to say, Jerome Brown sighting, Jerome Brown. Here we go.
Yeah, we should. We do need to have like a little like sounder like thing. Welshism. And yeah. We could put all the best pieces of those two players together and get a mega player, though. Just want to point out.
That would be an RB1 for sure. But even Chase Brown, not Jerome Brown, I really do think like among the players we're talking about today, like some of it is like, yeah, Chuba Hubbard is going to be a value, right? Like Rico Dowdle is going to be a value. Chase Brown like could be an RB1. Like if he does just kind of take over this backfield, given what we expect out of the offense, all of a sudden he's not a value, he's a league winner. So he's one of my favorite players that we picked for this discussion today. And like I think he's a no-brainer. Like you get to a certain point in your draft, and again, you can wait on Yahoo. Like I'm smashing him every time. Erickson, the wide receiver that you want to bring up here is somebody that you've talked about on a lot of shows. He's higher up in the rankings. He's not one of these kind of guys going in the 30s and 40s at his position, but he's still a value in your eyes and somebody that you are planting your flag on.
Yeah, because he's wide receiver 20 on Yahoo. He's ECR wide receiver 13, and it's Jaylen Waddle. Look, this guy's top 10 in receiving yards per game over the last 2 seasons, and he was bad last year. I don't know what else I need to do or say to convince people to draft Jaylen Waddle. If he doesn't get hurt, then he would be a great pick in round 2. That's all I'm saying. And the fact that you can get him on some of these home sites at the end of round 3, round 4, to me, you have no excuse for not drafting Jaylen Waddle because he's going to be there in round 3 wherever you pick. He's going to be there in round 2 wherever you pick. So you don't have any excuses. Draft Jaylen Waddle.
Welsh, are you drafting Jaylen Waddle this year?
100%. I actually just put together on the ITL side, I'll probably do something similar with Fantasy Pros, my perfect draft, the ideal situation. Funny enough, in that I had the last guy that Erickson was talking about over on ESPN and Amari Cooper as like a wide receiver 3 ideal situation, or wide receiver maybe even 2. Jaylen Waddle is 100% on that list. even if you have to put him in a wide receiver one, and this is if I were putting together like a high-end RB, the hero, the superhero, the Avengers hero team, I'll call it, a build where it's 2 running backs at the top. Jaylen Waddle, to me, would be the ideal player to get as your wide receiver one on that, because you obviously are giving up some of those top guys, but he's an absolutely explosive wide receiver on a big passing offense, a big overall offensive scoring side that I think targets get littered across the board. There's obviously a lot of focus and concentration on Tyreek Hill, but I've been saying it anytime I've been with Erickson or really any of the crew. Jaylen Waddle just seems criminally underrated. I know Joe doesn't agree with us on this one, but I think he is underrated across the board. And with Yahoo being the biggest discrepancy, it is a huge opportunity for people.
Auto draft in round 3. I mean, a lot of players are either high ceiling or high floor. He's both. And I want that guy on my roster, especially if I have 2 other players already drafted ahead of him. Well, who's your receiver here for Yahoo?
All right, so we're going to go into the rookie range here, and it's kind of hard. We're actually going to talk about one site coming up here that you really don't get any values on rookies. And that site specifically might be a little bit ahead of the game. And every other site, it can kind of go back and forth where you're going to find the value. This is probably the best value you're going to find on Xavier Worthy. He has an ECR of 39. Over on ESPN, he's wide receiver 43. Now, one of the things that is happening, though, and Erickson has been at the forefront of this, has been the resurgence of Rashee Rice, where people are kind of coming to terms with, oh yeah, you know what? That court date isn't going to be till December. It's looking a lot less likely. They're not going to take any action before the court date is happening for a suspension. It's now looking like it might not happen. So Rashee Rice is starting to move up. But before that started to happen, with Hollywood Brown out, everyone started looking and saying, wow, look at this connection that's going on with Xavier Worthy and Patrick Mahomes. Look at the explosive big plays he can do deep. And what does Patrick Mahomes love to do? Short to Kelsey, and then bam, go long. That's going to be Worthy. So from that big explosive play side, I love the idea, again, if this is another wide receiver you can get as like a wide receiver 4. You could really get him as a 4 and maybe as a 5 on ESPN. And these are the type of players that have the best upside I want to fill my bench with. I want to fill my bench with a player. I would also say Keon Coleman, Rome Odunze, Xavier Worthy, and this is the best value you can have for Worthy. So there are a lot of weapons there, and Rashee Rice playing the whole season maybe caps some of it. So we are battling a little bit of, as you said, Worm, there's players that are great values and there's players that are league winners. I don't think Xavier Worthy is a league winner. I think Rico Dowdle was a league winner. I think Chase Brown can be a league winner. But I think Xavier Worthy is the best value, and this is that best spot that you can do it. And he is a prime type of target that you want as your top bench wide receiver, because the upside could, I say that, and he could be a league winner if he becomes the number 1 in Kansas City. But best value here, ESPN or Yahoo for Xavier Worthy.
Erickson, am I remembering correctly that you have Worthy as kind of like the Chiefs receiver that you're targeting and you're above consensus on?
I'm above consensus on Worthy and Rashee Rice, because I think Rice is mispriced because of the suspension concerns, which I don't think is actually going to happen. And then Worthy because he's a exciting rookie that's the perfect fit with Patrick Mahomes. And I just think that this happened last year when Devon Achane ended up in Miami. We all saw, oh my God, this is perfect. And what do you know? It worked out. So I'm not overthinking, the targets, how much is he going to play? They have Kelsey, they have Rice. I don't care. I just know Worthy is a prospect that I was super, super high on. And he went to the perfect situation with the perfect quarterback to unlock his abilities. Again, he's Deshaun Jackson 2.0. And I want that guy on my fantasy team. So, yes, we're going to see it all Thursday night. You're going to see your Ravens corners getting absolutely cooked, Worm. And it's going to be by Mr. Xavier Worthy. So, buckle up.
They took Nate Wiggins so he could run step for step with Worthy on some of those downfield passes. That'll be a fun rookie matchup there. Recap here for Yahoo, the most undervalued players as we see it: Jerome Ford, Chase Brown, Jaylen Waddle, and Xavier Worthy. Guys, what's the most valuable thing in the world? A healthy fantasy roster going into the playoffs, a quarterback on a rookie contract, maybe it's just having the number 1 pick on fantasy draft day. Now, the second most valuable thing, that would be time, especially this time of year when I have less available time than ever as I get ready for the season. And taking up a lot of that time was worrying about my body odor. This has been especially difficult for me personally, since some of you guys know this already. I don't actually have a sense of smell. I know everybody can be paranoid about smelling, especially by the time you get to midday. But for me, it's even more pronounced since I can't even smell myself. That's a lot of time spent worrying, but not anymore. I've switched to Mando whole body deodorant, and it saved so much time. Time that I've spent perfecting my softball swing. Not to brag, I did go 5 for 5 last night with 4 extra base hits. Mando has saved me so much time. Even Welsh would pick me up in fantasy baseball. And here's how they do it. Mando doesn't cover up odor after the fact with heavy fragrances like certain other deodorants. It stops odor at the source by blocking the bacteria on your skin from eating your sweat, which is the actual cause of BO. What does this mean? It means Mando is clinically proven to control odor for up to 72 hours. That is a long time. So give yourself more time and get some Mando whole body deodorant. And they've got a special offer for new customers to get $5 off Mando's best-selling starter pack with code FantasyPros at shopmando.com. I can't tell you guys enough how much of a relief it is to have a deodorant I can really trust without being able to smell myself. And Mando is safe to use anywhere on your body, so there's no part of me I have to worry about. I love that I can trust it was developed by a doctor and that I can trust it in all the cracks and crevices. Remember, new customers get $5 off a starter pack, which comes with both a solid stick deodorant and cream tube deodorant, plus 2 more free products of your choice, plus free shipping. So get 40% off your starter pack with code FantasyPros at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. All right, guys, I wanted to go a little longer on the ESPN and Yahoo folks because those are the 2 platforms that most people play on. We do want to hit on, like I mentioned, NFL.com, Sleeper, and CBS as well. So we'll go a little quicker on these, but we know that people do play them. So we wanted to make sure we highlight some players here as well. Erickson, start us off with your running back on NFL.com.
Yeah, for me, it's Brian Robinson. He is RB 37 on NFL.com. He's ECR RB 29. Yes, ECR RB 29 for a player that was RB 22 last year in total. And he was the RB4 through the first 11 weeks and was 11th in points per game. So basically, he was a top 5 running back before he got hurt with a hamstring injury. And I'm on the side of Brian Robinson is the 1A to Austin Eckler's 1B in this backfield. And he's the guy I just prefer because if Jaden Daniels is going to take this Commanders offense to the next level, it's not going to be because he's dumping the ball off to running backs. I think it's because he's moving the ball efficiently, creating red zone opportunities. And I think Brian Robinson is going to be the goal line back. So if Robinson is efficient, which he's been first 2 years of his NFL career, despite dealing with some injuries to start, I think that he's in a great spot and he's just very undervalued here across the board, but especially on NFL.com.
Yeah, the more mock drafts I do, the more I'm just realizing I need to move Brian Robinson even higher in my rankings. Like every time I see him available, he's somebody I want to have on my roster. I think the upside is very apparent. I think he absolutely needs to be in the top 24 running backs, if not maybe even a couple of spots ahead of that. I think it's a great call. And again, kind of talking about I think the floor is actually relatively high for where he's being valued. And again, the ceiling I think is pretty apparent, especially if you do think he kind of is really taking over the role, instead of Austin Eckler this season, which I think he will do. Welsh, where are you ranking Brian Robinson?
I'm not as big on Brian Robinson as the rest of the crew.
Finally, a disagreement here from Welsh.
Yeah, well, it's not. Listen, this is a value. I'm gonna hone in. Like you give me one of these guys outside the top 36. He is not or NFL.com is saying he's not a flex option. No, that's not the case. But I'm not as you have to have Brian Robinson. We did the fantasy sleeper episode from the Fest, which will be up on the YouTube. And we had Michael F. Florio on, and Florio was talking about Austin Eckler. I tend to think that Eckler is going to get a higher usage. Erickson said it right, though, that it's like a 1A, 1B situation. But I'm just not sure that 1B or 1A situation makes Brian Robinson a high end RB2 or something like that. I think he belongs in that low RB2, RB3 range because I think Eckler is going to take some of that equity away. There's also red zone potential with Jaden Daniels, who's going to be running a lot as well. I think he's a good running back. He's a massive value here, though. So he is not a must for me, but there's no argument that he's not a value in this spot.
Well, who's your running back here?
NFL.com ranks stinky. They need Mando. The NFL.com ranks on the running backs need some Mando, my friends. And we will be the Mando to these ranks to let you know who, because the number 1 sleeper back, the Mount Rushmore of the Fantasy Football Fest of players that we talked about, ladies and gentlemen, is Denver Bronco running backs. And we have one of that guy that's going to be coming up here shortly. The other one, how about Javonte Williams? Javonte Williams, ECR 27, here 36. On NFL.com, the 36 running back. That is one of the biggest discrepancies that we've talked about, and I'm looking through my own list here of players. I don't have many that have that big of a discrepancy, but both of these guys at these costs, the Denver Bronco running backs, because I'm going to talk about the other one coming up here shortly. like they're an easy investment. And I know Jaleel McLaughlin is definitely a big sleeper that you want to get invested on. And Javonte Williams could be maybe a little bit of a question because some of the costs could be higher, but it's not here. It's at 36. I mean, Brian Robinson and Javonte Williams are really kind of lead you to NFL.com to be able to play a zero running back strategy. You can play a zero RB strategy a lot easier on this platform because you could bounce and take both of those guys outside of the top, essentially 36 RBs. So Javonte looks healthier. He's getting runs with that offense. If we get those previous legs we've seen of him, he's just a value. And you can see that the ECR has him as a top 30. This is a 9 running back differential, 9 rank differential between. So we'll take the Mando to it and we'll let you know there are some massive, massive RB values on NFL.com.
I've said all offseason, I love guys who are yet another year removed from that big injury. I think we tend to undervalue them really in general. I do think his ECR is appropriate. It's not like I have him much higher than that, but to me, he needs to be in the top 30. I love this pick. And like, just the more I've, heard about the way they're talking about him in Denver, I'm out here in Denver, so I hear people talk about this backfield a lot. The more I've watched him, I'm just like, I'm buying in that he's, relatively back. And they're some of these guys we talk about, like they have both a high floor and a high ceiling. Maybe not the highest floor because you could see a path where it doesn't work out, but I think the ceiling is really clear, especially in a Sean Payton offense. I think this is a terrific call, Welsh, and I'm super on board with this. Erickson, how are you ranking Javonte Williams this year?
I think that he's almost a top 24 running back for me. Look, this is my other rule. Number 1 is draft a Green Bay Packers wide receiver. Rule number 2, draft a Denver Broncos running back. Those are my 2 rules this year, and I'm not going away from it. So, Welsh, you have to get more room for more tattoos.
That's my third tattoo.
Body.
Get it on my leg. I'll just do it on my inside of my.
When I look at this Broncos offense, it just screams to me So if they're going to move the ball, right, it's got to be through the running backs. Are we head over heels about drafting one of these receivers? Not really. Their tight ends is a mess. So how are they going to function? It seems like the best offensive players they have are their running backs. And maybe Sean Payton is just lying about how much he loves them all, or maybe he just looks at his roster and realizes, oh, the running backs actually are the best offensive players on my team, and this is how we're going to move the ball. And given what Bo Nix was the best at, being a check down artist at Oregon, well, then this is what we should expect. So again, at first I was off of Javonte because I wanted to see if he was healthy or not. I was concerned about the split with the other running backs, but now I'm looking at it as I think that there's enough of a pie to go around in this backfield where I want to draft all these Broncos running backs.
Erickson, let's go to your wide receiver.
It's Rashee Rice for me. Wide receiver 36 ADP. His ECR is still really low at wide receiver 32. I have him at wide receiver 21. So I just don't think he's going to get suspended this year. I really don't. He has a December 9th court date, and he's just mispriced everywhere on every single site because those are all baking in, well, what if he gets suspended? I feel pretty confident saying that I don't think he's going to get suspended. And even if he does, it would be towards the end of the season where so many things have already happened with your draft, with your team. I think you'll be more than fine benefiting from Rashee Rice, who, look, when he's healthy, if he's playing a full season, he could catch 100 passes in this offense based on what he did at the second half of last year. He had 105 catches last year for 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns in 20 games. He was a rookie that broke out with Patrick Mahomes, and he's going outside the top 30 wide receivers. Again, it's because of the suspension, which is why his price is suppressed, but it's not bounced back. We're not recalibrating what his ADP and rank should be. I'm trying to push him up the ECR, but it's not, I can't do it alone, folks. Experts, come with me. Rank Rashee Rice higher. Let's go.
Well, so you obviously have mentioned, Xavier Worthy already. What do you think about Rice?
Yeah, no, I love this. Again, in that perfect team, because of the value, I had thrown Rashee Rice in as like the 4th wide receiver, a flex. And based on these prices, it can be done. It really, if you're talking about mid-30s for Rashee Rice, there's an absolute path based on a lot of drafting strategies where you can have him as your wide receiver 4. I cannot think of a wide receiver 4 with more upside outside of maybe if a Keon Coleman really ends up hitting or something like that. I love it. I think the target share will be there. I like the cost. I'm with Erickson. Like, the rankers need to move up, but I don't want all the sites to adjust because I want to still get that value. I think one of the best things you do, I agree with you. I don't think he's going to get suspended, but we have to find some way to continue to bake that in. And the bake in is just give me more value. Don't put him at wide receiver 20 or 22 or 24. Anything outside of mid wide receiver 3, you're just getting into big value where it is absolutely worth the risk. So I like the Rashee Rice pick here, and this is one of the best platforms to get him.
It's time for this week's player that I would give almost anything to draft for my fantasy lineup, brought to you by Uber Eats. That player is Malik Nabers, Welsh's pick for most undervalued on NFL.com. So because he is undervalued, we don't need to give up almost anything to get him, but we would. And why is that, Welsh?
Because Malik Nabers is the cheapest cost on this. Why are we going to give it all up on Malik Nabers? I mean, it's pretty easy to say he's the number one wide receiver on this team. The quarterback play is in question. He is going to be a target monster. You can worry about rookie wide receivers and overall catch percentages, especially in bad quarterback play. Actually, something I had mentioned, this isn't like a rookie situation, but the bad quarterback play of Tennessee last year led to really bad catch percentages for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, and targets were what made that work. Same thing is going to happen in this situation. Daniel Jones is a lesser of a quarterback, but Malik Nabers is a superstar. He makes plays, continues to make plays, is one of the highest risers this entire year. But guess what? On NFL.com, you're going to get the value. He is not a wide receiver 2 on this platform. He has an ECR of 23, which is already a little too low. I got him quite a bit higher. He is 27 on this platform. It is hard to find value on the buzziest of buzzy players. And I think we could argue about it. Find me another player that has had more buzz consistently throughout the offseason for Malik Nabers, because we all see it. He's going to get massive amounts of targets. You hope the touchdowns are going to be there in this offense, but if they are, it'll be going through Malik Nabers. And here you get the best value. So if you're playing on NFL.com, I am imploring you to queue up Malik Nabers and make sure you get him, because you can get him as a wide receiver 3 on this platform. He will not be a wide receiver 3 in 80% of other leagues, in any other platform. He, in some respects, may cost a wide receiver 1. Wide receiver 3, best value, Malik Nabers. It's almost untrendy to love Malik Nabers at this point. I still love him, and this was shouting to me. One of the best values, really, from an overall production standpoint of everything we're going to do here, is getting a discount on Malik Nabers, because we're not saying that a whole lot.
I couldn't agree more. This will be the only year of his career you can get a discount on him. He doesn't just need to be in the top 24. He needs to be in the top 20. Frankly, I think he needs to be in the top 18. Like there's just no world where he should be ranked where he is on some of these sites. And I get it. Like, Daniel Jones is not Kyler Murray. When talking about these kind of elite rookie quarterbacks, that these elite rookie receivers who they're paired with their quarterbacks this year. But I don't think the gap is so wide that Marvin Harrison Jr. should be inside the top 10, and Malik Nabers is not even a wide receiver 2. Like, to me, that's insane. These guys were very, very close as prospects coming out. And also, there's even more of a path to targets for Nabers. And I think Daniel Jones isn't good, but he's good enough that Nabers can be awesome this year. Erickson, I know you're high on him too.
Yeah, because he's the offense. Like, that's what they're going to do. They're going to move the ball with Malik Nabers, and Brian Daboll has had success in the past. It's not like we've never seen this offense work. So I get Daniel Jones coming off an ACL. It doesn't look great. Okay, well, all it means is you can get Malik Nabers at a discount. And I just think that, yes, it's going to go through their lumps, but if he's seeing 15 opportunities, they're giving him rushing attempts, bubble screens, he's too good to not make a play or two with his opportunities. So even if the offense does struggle, I think he, in the talent that he has and possesses, he's going to be able to generate enough to pay off at least a wide receiver 3 price tag. And I think, obviously, we're expecting a lot more.
So that's why we would give up almost anything to draft Malik Nabers in our lineups this season. That was this week's Uber Eats Player of the Week. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, the official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. All right, guys, let's go to Sleeper here. Erickson, who's your running back?
Yeah, so Sleeper, I didn't really find a ton of players that I really loved undervalued versus the ECR. The only one that I really could find specifically at running back was Joe Mixon. And his ECR and ADP on the Sleeper site are pretty similar as RB15 ECR, RB15 ADP, but he still falls overall into that round 4/5 turn, which in leagues like Sleeper home leagues where running backs are going a little bit more aggressive, it is kind of interesting to see Joe Mixon fall a little bit sometimes at the end of round 4. And I think that, his range of outcomes, I think he could put up a very similar stat line to Derrick Henry, considering he plays at a good offense. He's on a new team. He should have a ton of touchdown opportunities. But the thing that separates him from Henry, maybe he's not as great as a rusher, but he can catch passes out of the backfield. And say what you want about Joe Mixon, all of his days with the Bengals, not the perfect running back, but the guy always scored fantasy points, right? He was always on the fringe of a top 10 running back every single year that he was healthy. So I think Joe Mixon is somebody to kind of circle because I think he might fall in some of your drafts. You can scoop up some RB1 upside pretty late on the sleeper platform.
Well, choose your running back here.
All right, so this was the actual Mount Rushmore of sleeper players. I'm pretty safe to say this is the number one sleeper, consensus sleeper on Fantasy Pros and Debro's blood brother. It is Jaleel McLaughlin, where he comes at the best value here. And I just want to say this about sleeper. Sleeper is where you don't find values on rookies specifically, and really buzzy players. You don't find a lot. And that's why even Erickson was just like, well, it's kind of hard to find them. It's Mixon because there's not a lot. And they have been drafting for months and months and months. And it's a very astute audience of guys that are drafting there. But one of the things that hasn't really changed as far as that rank go is Jaleel McLaughlin. And he, again, like I said, he's one of the top sleepers on our platform, and he comes cheaper here. ECR 49, he's RB 53 on sleeper. And Erickson kind of broke it down a lot earlier when we were talking about Javonte Williams, in that like they're going to run this offense through the running backs. Jaleel McLaughlin is getting an opportunity, and there's a path where he could be the number one. I think we're moving away from that because I'm a Javonte Williams guy as well. But I think we could get double-digit targets and shares, whether it's targets, carries per game for McLaughlin, because they're going to run through there. And he is the literal version of free. Outside the top 50 in RBs, there's a lot of upside. A lot of people want you to take it. I can't think of a better bench running back, especially because they don't have to be your top bench running back. You can get guys like Chuba Hubbard as a bench running back at like RB 3 or 4. You can get McLaughlin at the very, very end, and sleeper is allowing that for the best value.
Erickson, who's your wide receiver on sleeper?
Yeah, I do want to add one other thing when it comes to the sleeper platform. The fact that the rookies are not as great values. On some of these other home sites, rookies are just absolutely buried on the ADP. And what you can do, here's a fantasy hack for those that are listening. Look at where these rookies are drafted on sleeper and then draft them there on your platforms to make sure you get them. Because I always get questions, well, I want to draft this player, but I don't want to reach. You still want to get good value on those players. Well, the sleeper, where their ADP is, because of the more astute drafting community on the sleeper platform, you can get a better idea of, okay, I really like this rookie here, but this is where I should draft him to make sure I definitely get him. Because we're talking about values, but at the end of the day, you still want to get the certain players. And I'm okay reaching, especially when they're going later anyway. So
yeah, let me just quickly say, like within reason, like obviously you don't want to take like Jaleel McLaughlin in the first round or whatever, but within reason, don't worry about reaching. Like just if you take a player who's really good, that's not a reach. That's really good. Like, Scott Pianowski says it a lot, like any strategy works if you pick the right players. Like reaching works if you pick the right player. Like don't worry so much if it's like a round or two earlier than a guy. Just if you really have conviction and believe in him, just get the guy that you think is going to be really good and reap the benefits. So I had to say that.
And that's why it's understanding these sites too. This is that theory of what you just said. This is putting into application. Like we're identifying some of the players where it's like, you don't have to reach, but also know where the values are so you can start to plan for where you're picking those. And that's kind of the thesis of everything we're doing here.
Oh, so you only get one pick per round.
That's
right?
it.
So that you also have to keep that in mind that, I can't wait to round 14 to pick all the undervalued guys because you only have one round 14 pick. So you got to keep that in mind as well. But I will get to my wide receiver. It's Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Again, another player that kind of across the board was a player that was undervalued on a lot of these sites. So on sleeper specifically, which I'm actually kind of surprised that it was so low because he's a second-year wide receiver. You'd expect him to be higher, but he's buried. Wide receiver 47. So Smith-Njigba, again, when you're getting down to that wide receiver tier where it's a lot of rookies, a lot of question marks. I mean, Jay said to me, even if he doesn't smash and melt faces in year 2, I'm pretty sure we can all agree he's going to be better. So I think that he's definitely a small win as a wide receiver 4. And I just think that he also has that upside case where it's a first round pick. They finally unlock him in this new offense. He takes over the wide receiver 2 role. It's a 1A, 1B. He kind of, he puts Tyler Lockett kind of in his place as a veteran. So I think Smith-Njigba, it just makes so much sense at the price. It's a no flyer upside case that I just think I can't draft enough of.
But by the way, I totally agree. I was going to bring up how surprised I was that he would fall under this category for a sleeper, given the nature of the platform. I would have thought he was similar to some of these rookies where they're a little, more correctly or overvalued on sleeper than the other sites. So that is a surprising one that folks should definitely take advantage of. Welsh, who's your wide receiver?
Well, how about a ball hawk wide receiver who is going to be the number one on a bad team that is going to be playing from behind every single game, maybe every single quarter? Well, that's Diontae Johnson. And Diontae Johnson on Sleeper is pushed down probably because, some of these rookies, again, we just talked about it, rookies are pushed up. He's inherently one of the guys that goes down. One of the biggest discrepancies, again, ECR 34, wide receiver 3 for us. He's wide receiver 42 on Sleeper. So if you're playing in a full PPR format, he is pushed down. This is the type of thing that, and I think this is what could be happening on Sleeper, is you might be allowed to reach up for the Odunze, the Worthy. They go up, maybe a Keon Coleman, and then people can come back and take a Diontae Johnson. Diontae Johnson is as good as a wide receiver 3 as you could ask for. He's ECR 34. It's I guess it's lower on the wide receiver 3 platform, but this is representing he is your top bench wide receiver or a flex option for a guy that, yes, I know they have Thielen and stuff, but they're going to be playing from behind on all of these games. Diontae Johnson is going to get 7 to 8 targets minimum per game. He's ECR or he's ADP 42, wide receiver 42 on here. It's a huge value for a platform that is valuing a lot of the buzzy, exciting guys. He is not that, but he should be for the build of your team as the 42nd wide receiver.
Let's quickly hit on a couple of names from CBS, then we'll get out of here. Erickson, who's your running back for CBS?
Yeah, running back is tough on CBS because there's no site that wants running backs more than those drafting on CBS Sports. So I had to go all the way down to RB 36 ECR or Tyjae Spears. He's 36 in CBS's ADP. He's RB 30 in the ECR. Look, it's a 1A, 1B situation between him and Tony Pollard. I can't tell you confidently who's going to be the starting running back. I think they're going to switch. But I think looking at the value you can get at him as a 30 ranked running back in the ECR, you get him at RB 36 on a site that's super running back heavy. If you dare to do a zero hero RB on CBS, then you got to circle Tyjae Spears.
Welsh, who's your running back?
The other running back that you could target, and I would bet that Erickson definitely saw this and was like, whoa, and I had this on this list. This is probably the most prominent one. We have him as ECR RB 20. He is the 25th running back on a heavy RB platform. Rhamondre Stevenson. It's a huge value. He is the offense. He's the number one. You can make all the arguments across the board of where Rhamondre Stevenson sits, but this is the difference between him being an RB2 and a starting flex running back. So I think, again, like if you're doing the RB strategy, the zero RB strategy, we just identified probably the 2 guys that you would want to go for. This is one of the very few values on CBS's platform where you can get an RB. So I think he is the number 1 value.
Erickson, who's your receiver?
Yeah, so because the RBs get drafted so aggressively, a lot of talented receivers fall significantly. So I know I've kind of talked about fades with Drake London and Nico Collins. I'm probably going to draft those guys on CBS because they go much later on those platforms, more in round 3. And specifically, my favorite guy that goes the latest is Michael Pittman Jr. He's wide receiver 22 in the CBS ADP, and he's ECR wide receiver 14. So I've been on Pittman throughout the entire process, and I know I have a CBS league coming up, and I cannot wait to scoop up Michael Pittman in potentially round 4. Sign me up.
Welsh, who's your wide receiver?
I've been watching Hard Knocks, and it's been very fun, and it's fun to see all these guys kind of working together. Very different the narrative of what is out there media public-wise about Keenan Allen and apparently his 350-pound wide receiver now compared to what he is on Hard Knocks. But one thing you can't deny is there's a great connection between Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, and Rome looks fantastic, getting some of those little rookie mistakes out of the way, but the route running and stuff like that, well, guess what? On CBS, huge value. He's ECR wide receiver 42, but he's wide receiver 46 on this platform. And I'll just say it again. When you get to my bench, I want these rookies that have the potential to be a number 1 on a team. Yes, they got DJ Moore, of course, but Odunze could be a 1B. He could be the Waddle to Moore being Hill for that offense. And this is a massive, massive value. You don't find it a lot with these rookies. Odunze would be a great piece to your build to be on your bench. Let him sit for a couple weeks. CBS is allowing it for the platform. So like Erickson said, they're wide receiver values that you can play around with here. So my guy, Rome Odunze.
Possibly my favorite pick we talked about. I love Rome Odunze this year. I think he's a great value. I think the upside is so obvious if the opportunity is better than we expect for him to be just an absolute beast. And he was right there with Harrison and Nabers, like as a prospect. So I don't think he should be getting overlooked. And particularly on CBS, it looks like that's happening. We'll get out of there on that. Just a reminder for everyone, if you want to kind of take some of this advice and highlight some of these players for your actual drafts, like the draft assistant with FantasyPros is awesome. And it is right there incorporated on the drafting platform for these sites, you can sync your league and literally have it suggest to you who some of these values are live during the draft. So you don't even have to remember all the names we listed here. It will do the work for you. You can also create your own cheat sheets to include that as well. So just a reminder to check out Draft Wizard and My Playbook and all the great stuff we have there to help you out. We will get out of there on that. For Welsh and Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.